On this episode of Delivering Marketing Joy, we talk with Lori Cates from Imagine Brand about leadership lessons and the best questions to ask in an interview. Hey there, and welcome to another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. I'm your host, Kirby Hasseman, and it's truly my honor today to be joined by Lori Cates. She's the president and general manager of Imagine Brands. Lori, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, at Imagine Brands, it seems like you've built a really nice team, a great team together. So, I see that from afar. So, what are some tips you have for other leaders who are trying to build great teams? Do you have any tips for us?
I think, Imagine we have built a great team, and I'm really proud of the team. But I think some key factors in building a really great team are communication. I think your team needs to know where you're going and why you're going, what's the overall vision. And when they can really understand the why, they, more times than not, get behind it and completely embrace it and really support the organization.
Yeah.
I think another key variable is mutual respect and appreciation for one another. Often you get this, a successful company is never about one person or one department. It's about the entire team. And you can have a fantastic sales organization, but if you don't have the production and the service to back you up, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
Likewise, there's also the mutual respect in that so often you'll see somebody standing afar and saying, wow, the sales job is just so incredibly easy.
Yeah.
They get to wine and dine and, you really have to walk into their shoes, and that's reversed for other departments as well. So often in an out of stock situation or whatnot, the sales guy turns and says, wow, if I was in purchasing, we'd never run out of stock. Well, that's not realistic either.
Yeah.
So I think understanding that everybody has their own specific talent, and we're all specialized and we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and you have to trust that the other department wants to win as much as you want to win.
Yeah.
And just working together, but being open, and then appreciation. Say thank you every once in a while, because it goes a long way. And when you really know one another, it helps you get through even the difficult times. So communication, mutual respect, and appreciation for one another, and then finally have fun. I'm a big proponent of, if you don't like what you're doing, find something that moves you, because life's short, and when people love what they do, there's a natural passion that comes through, and it's very evident, instead of trying to force it. And the likelihood, if you're trying to force something like that, the likelihood of being successful is much, much slimmer than if you love what you do. It just comes easy and it comes naturally. Yeah. So I think those would be my three.
No, that's really good. And it's funny. One of the things you said, it reminded me. I was listening to a book recently, and it talked about, one of the authors said, "Look, if you want to hate someone, you should not get to know them." Right? Mm-hmm. And that goes back to that empathy thing, is that if you know what they're going through and you walk a mile in their shoes, you have a much better respect for their perspective and everything. I think that's great.
Absolutely.
So Imagine Brands is big in our industry, top 20, right? Is that right?
Pretty close, yep.
Yeah. So I've often thought that, the best leaders don't necessarily create followers, they create good leaders, right? So what advice do you have for leaders in your organization or any others?
Okay. Leadership advice. I think what I would say is, first, get the right people in the right seats.
Yeah.
As a leader, you have to know, and you have to remain humble, that you don't know it all. You have to really look at yourself and say, where am I strong and where am I weak? And where you're weak, that's where you need to bring your strongest people in. And then, schedule time literally to work on the business instead of in the business. And this has always been one of my challenges. And so recently I've actually started scheduling it in to my Outlook calendar, just blocking off time, because it's important. One is what's next? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? We can't rest on our laurels. So it's always understanding what's coming down the pike. So I think that that's key. And then I would say the last couple of things is, and this might sound funny, but remember your job is to endure and inflict pain. And I don't mean that literally from the inflicting pain part, but it kind of goes back to what's next and not resting on your laurels and making sure that we're ready for whatever market condition comes up next. And, we've seen so many successful organizations, even within our industry, that they're fabulous one year and then the next they fall. So I think that that's really key. And then secondly, as far as enduring pain is, I think as a leader, you have to have very broad shoulders. And it's not necessarily about being in charge, but it's taking care of those that are in your charge. And that's one of my favorite quotes from Simon Sinek. Yeah. I screw his last name up all the time.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. So I think that those are keys. And then just take care of yourself. I think taking care of yourself creates the ability for you to be a better leader and do all of those things that I mentioned better or doing well.
Well, it's funny, one of the first things you said there, I actually recently have been telling my team that we need to fill up my calendar intentionally. I've been telling everybody, if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. So if I want to be intentional about doing anything, to your point, I have to get it on my calendar.
Yeah.
So the first thing you said there about leadership is getting the right people, right? So in doing that, you got to go through the interview process. You got to sift through people who are the wrong people. So you need to interview a lot. So do you have any go-to interview questions for people?
Yeah, usually when I'm interviewing a candidate, they've already gone through some type of vetting process.
Sure.
And so what I'm really looking for is a little bit different than, maybe Dana or Jenny would be looking. They're looking at the specific, can this person do this particular job? So I'm pretty comfortable by the time the candidate comes to me that they can do the position that they're applying for. So what I'm looking for is more of a cultural fit. And, I like to try to ask situational questions, so they change very often depending upon the position or the resume and how it reads. But I'll often pick different areas of their career path or a particular point that they call out in the resume, and I'll ask them to expand upon that and give me specifics of, maybe it was a problem with their problem with an order or a customer or their coworker or maybe their boss. And just to kind of let them talk. And as they start talking, then generally more questions follow. And you can get quite often a pretty good understanding of whether or not the way they handle those situations fits well within your organization. So I kind of do it that way because cultural fit is important. There's a lot of very intelligent people out there, but culturally, every organization is not right for one another. So that's key because I think you can put a very, very smart and intelligent person into a position and they fail just from a culture standpoint.
Yeah.
So that's key.
No, I couldn't agree more. That is, I always tell people when I'm creating my company, I want to create a place where I want to go to work. And,
Yeah.
that's about culture. So
Yeah.
you're right. Okay, well, cool. You have taken the time to answer my 3 questions, Lori, and I appreciate that. I give everybody the chance to ask me one. Do you have one for me?
I do.
Okay.
So I think it's a little lighthearted.
Okay.
We have Steve Harvey and now Warren Beatty, who both had very public flubs. What's your biggest public oops moment?
Oh, man. Oh, gosh. I have to think about that. My biggest public oops moment. There have been so many. It's hard to narrow it down. My favorite one that I didn't do it, but I was sitting beside the person who did. It was the moment that everybody is concerned about when the guy next to you is talking to the guy next to him and says, "Hey, is your wife pregnant?" And and you just go, because what I've learned is the rule on that is never, ever, 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 ever ask that question. And I was in the space when that happened, and it was one of those where you couldn't leave, and so you just sat there and was like, "Oh, good, there's not enough alcohol." So I didn't say that, but I felt like I was a part of it because I was right there. So that was a good one.
By association.
Yeah, that's right. That was a good question. Well, Lori, thank you so much for taking the time. You've given us a ton to kind of listen to and learn from, and I appreciate that. And hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Great. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. That's going to wrap up this edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, but wait, can you do me a favor? Please subscribe to my channel. If you haven't done it already, the way to do it's right over here. And hey, if you want to watch the last episode, check that out over here. Again, before you leave, subscribe.